Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Township Board's business meeting. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are one man down today. Mr. Bletcher will not be with us. He's excused. Additions, deletions.
Supervisor. I'd like to make a motion to add consent agenda number 7, which is that the Grosse Township Board hereby approves an agreement with Fishbeck Engineering purposes of performing a Phase 1 environmental site assessment and a hazardous materials inspection of the property commonly known as the Grosse Toll Bridge.
Second.
Thank you. This all goes in line with us doing our due diligence on the possible purchase of the toll bridge. It's the environmental inspection, Phase 1. We were able to get funds from the DCC Brownfield Committee to take care of the cost of this, so we're adding it now because we want to get it done. Derek, do you got anything else to add to that?
Nope, that covers it.
Okay.
Work would be 30 days and would start possibly tomorrow, be done by beginning of November.
Very good.
A little less than 30 days.
Any other questions or comments on that? Then all in favor of adding consent agenda number 7, Grosse Toll Bridge, agreement with Fishbeck for the purpose of performing Phase 1 environmental site assessment and hazardous material inspection of the property commonly known as Grosse Toll Bridge, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That will be added to the consent agenda as number 7. Any other additions or deletions? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are good to go. Okay. All right, that brings us to our presentation, which is our audit presentation. Teresa, do you want to do the introduction?
We completed and filed all the required reports for our audit for the year ended March 31st, 2024. And tonight we have Daniel Beard, manager with Yo, who worked and headed the audit for the township, to provide a presentation to the board.
Thank you, Teresa. So let's see. All right, I'm going to try my best here. I got to move through the PDF and then look at my slides here. We're going to start with basically what we're engaged to do is give an opinion on the financial statements. So that's the overall purpose of an audit engagement. In order for us to be able to give an opinion, we have to be a licensed CPA firm, which obviously we are, and we must be independent, so no conflicts of interest of any kind. The highest level of assurance that we can bring to a financial statement is an unmodified opinion, and that is the opinion that we gave the township. So that's the highest level of assurance. Obviously, if we were to grade your financials, that would be your A grade that you're looking for. Management's responsibility is the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. So although you have this huge stack for the audit report, really, We're engaged for that letter at the front, so the audit opinion, the statements themselves are those of management's. Management is also responsible for the implementation, design, and maintenance of internal controls. The purpose of that is for them to be able to detect and correct errors in a normal course of business throughout the year. And they're also responsible to evaluate if there's a going concern issue, which obviously with local governments, that's usually not as big of a concern. The auditor's responsibility, again, is to express an opinion on the financial statements. So users of the financial statements, such as the board and members in the community, can rely on the financial statements to make decisions. We go to this first slide right here. This is a snapshot of the general fund revenue and transfers in over a period of time, the period being the fiscal year 2024. As you can see there, like any other government, taxes is the largest piece of that pie right there, coming in at about 64%. Tax revenues are up about 6.7% from prior year. When we're looking at the tax revenues, that's an increase without an increase in tax rates in the general fund. So that increase is due to property values increasing over that period of time. Another item that I just want to touch on is the interest income. So another hot topic for local governments is they have cash. They're getting a lot more interest income than they have in previous years just because of the nature of investments that they're allowed to be in and the interest rates being up thanks to the feds. We go to the next slide. This is not a snapshot, but a trend of your fiscal years 2020 through 2024, so your last 5 years. If we look at 23 to 24, that's an increase from 6.8 million to 7.3 million, so that's an increase in revenues of about 7.2%. The previous year, it went up about 9.7%. A lot of that is due to inflation and some of those home values not being capped with the inflationary equalization that factors into your taxable income, taxable property value. The next slide is your general fund expenditures and transfers out. So this is the other side of your income statement for the general fund. The two largest pieces of the pie here are obviously public safety coming in at 61%, so $4.4 million, and general government at 35%, $2.5 million. So those two items combined are about 96% of the expenditures and transfers out for the general fund. So that's pretty lean operations coming out of the general fund, which is great. We go to the next slide. We have general fund expenditures and transfers out being trended. It's very similar to what we looked at for revenues. If we look at the change from 23 to 24, you can see a 6% increase. That's that $6.7 million to the $7.2 million from 23 to 24. The previous year, the expenditures jumped up they jumped up 7%. So as they are increasing, they're decreasing, but your revenues are increasing at a rate greater than that of your expenditures, which is kind of what you want to see. Ending fund balance for the year in the general fund was $3.6 million. That's not on the slide right here. And that ends up being about 50% of the total expenditures and transfers out if we're looking at 2024. That's really good, 50%. One of the things that we always tell people for general fund is anything between 15 and 25% is kind of, the ballpark. If you're falling below that, you're having problems. You guys are not having any problems from what we can see. The change in fund balance in the current year was $130,000. So not only do you have a healthy fund balance, but you actually operated at basically like a break even this year, which is fantastic. Another thing that we have in the financial statements is your enterprise funds. So your enterprise funds are on a full accrual approach. What we have is we have the airport and we have the DPW. You have an operating loss in both of them. Those operating expenses, though, include depreciation, which is obviously an estimate. So depreciation for public works was $2 million. If you take that out of there, you obviously have a large gain. However, those estimates are really vital in terms of determining how to build not fund balance, but net position in this instance for future capital improvements. The airport actually kind of historically operates at a loss, but the capital improvement activity that comes in on that, as you can see, is usually federal dollars. You had a $5.7 million grant that came in this year, which actually triggered a single audit, which For a local government, there are local governments that have single audits kind of regularly. However, what we're seeing now with the ARPA funding and whatnot, a lot more governments are having single audits. And we'll touch on that on the next slide. Well, not the next one, one after that. Another hot topic is the pension and the retiree healthcare contributions. So obviously those are trending up over time as covered payrolls kind of going down on those, and those plans are switching over in various communities. However, if you look at yours from 2023 to 2024, it's pretty consistent if you're looking at them at a combined. Your OPEB contribution for the year was actually up 9%. Your pension was down 4%. Now, again, that kind of factors in, the factors are covered payroll, there's actuarial assumptions, there's a lot that goes on in there, so we can see some very big swings. But I do want to touch on your pension. Your pension's funded at 57%. The goal is, the state wants everybody at 60%. When you're at 57%, the goal's 60%, you're basically there. You know, again, those actuarial changes can kind of kick you into that funded status. Your OPEB, which many people weren't funding whatsoever for the longest time, is at 5%. So that's something that started in a few years back, where you guys are starting to build up the fund balance in the OPEB to get it to that 40% that the state wants you at. So finally, like I said, we had a single audit. So with the single audit, we also had to issue. We had to look at internal controls and issue findings. We didn't have to issue findings, but we had several findings on gas and federal awards, and I just want to kind of go over those really quickly with you. We had a few prior period adjustments. Sometimes that happens when you have new people coming in that are going to kind of dig in and look at some of those areas. A few of the things that we found out was there was a prior period adjustment, and it's in the audit report for GASB 84. There was a new standard that came out 2 years ago that was implemented incorrectly. There was also a capital asset misstatement. There was more land that you guys had that was not on the government-wide financial statements. That doesn't impact the funds whatsoever, but there was more land that we had to add on there. And then we also had a gas finding, so an internal control finding on those written federal procedures, which we don't typically look at unless you trigger a single audit. That is a very common finding for local governments that are not having single audits regularly. I've worked with Teresa both at our firm and I was her past auditor, and I know that she knows those uniform guidance requirements inside and out, and I'm fairly confident that she's going to have those implemented very quickly for you guys. So if you do have federal awards coming in, you won't have that finding moving forward. In terms of the federal awards, that was the only finding that you had, was the written procedures. So unfortunately, if it hits the federal award, we also hit it with the internal controls on that piece. And then there was a couple items for management's consideration, something that written comments that we have to bring to the board's attention. Credit card, this was brought to our attention by Teresa, that there was a credit card that somebody had custody of the credit card, was like a volunteer or something to that effect. That's already been remedied. And then federal grants, when we are looking to get to the single audit numbers that we have to report to the feds, we have to report an exact dollar amount, and Teresa did some significant digging to get to those actual dollar amounts, and that was because other departments were able to apply for federal grants, maybe not know that it triggered, single audit requirement potentially, so she had to do some significant digging to get to that dollar amount. So it was really good for her, and she just wanted us to kind of touch on it here as well. And other than that, that kind of concludes the audit engagement. It was different this year, obviously working with Teresa. We kind of dug in really deep and made some changes to a few areas that maybe wouldn't have been caught if Teresa hadn't dug into those areas. Any questions?
Yeah. Back to the interest area that you were talking about. Just so I'm clear on this, I know maybe a few years back the interest wasn't really a big deal.
Yep.
I mean, obviously it's much more now than it was 5-6 years ago.
Yep.
Interest from enterprise, from the general fund, any interest that's accumulated must stay in those funds, is that correct?
Yes, that is my belief. I'd have to do some additional digging on that. I believe that is the case. The big issue right now with interest isn't that as much as if you're making interest off some of those bonds, then you can have arbitrage implications, and then you'll have to pay tax to the federal government. But I don't typically see people making interest and transferring it to other funds. I don't think you can do that.
Okay.
I had a question about that standard that was implemented incorrectly. Can you just explain that a little bit more and maybe how it might have affected things?
Yep. So, prior to GASB 84, there were more activities that you were able to have in the fiduciary funds, so that way it wouldn't transfer into your primary government, so your governmental and your business type stuff. What you had to do is go through that and determine what actually did have to flow into special revenue. And when we did that, when we worked with past management, we created a performance deposit account, because a lot of that activity were performance deposits that the past management thought were still going to be collected. When we dug into it further, there was other activity in there. There was an internal service fund that was not really material, but in overall there were some material items when we moved all that activity into the general fund, which actually grew your fund balance in the general fund significantly, because a lot of those items were they were never going to get collected by outside people, correct?
Correct. Some of them were federal or state grants.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were federal or state grants. Some of them were more long-term projects in nature, and they did not qualify as fiduciary fund activity based under the new GASB 84. So the two departments that were affected the most were the police department, and positively, and the building department, and moving the bond activity to go with the building department that's already in the general fund.
Was the building department affected negatively then by that, or no?
I'm sorry?
Because you said that the police department was affected positively, but was the building department affected positively
Right,
too?
the building department collects bonds, and then those can be refunded, so the bonds themselves were not, they were not part of the equity transfer. They're actually shown as a liability in the general fund, because they're potentially due back to the purchasers.
Yeah, those are bonds that the builders or residents put up, and if they perform, they get their bond back.
Gotcha. Okay, I think I got that. And then I have one more. I know a lot of what you focus on is just prior year, but I mean, residents and myself included tend to worry about the long term, especially those retiree pension and healthcare obligations. I know you said 57% is basically there. My understanding is the state does ding us when we're under that 60%, so I'm concerned about that. And then also just the new requirements for healthcare to get to 40%. It feels like we're pretty far off that. So I don't. Yeah.
A lot of governments are far off on the OPEB specifically. Now, if you remember when I presented last year, the pension, a lot of people that were below the 60%, they got that pension grant that brought them up to 60%. However, the market didn't do as well, so now they're all below 60% again. So there's some fluctuation there. Really, you just got to keep on doing what you're doing and contributing to those plans in excess of what the defined contribution, what the ARC is.
And our history is that 1 year we'll be under like 57,
Yep.
and then the next year we're at 62, and it's mainly because of what happens in the market and the interest that you and income that you get, as well as actuarial.
Yep, that has the
So
biggest
those are the
impact.
things which you don't have a lot of control over.
Correct.
Is there a consequence to either?
Not at this time. Not at this time. They're just. I think they might make Teresa do a corrective action plan or something to that effect, and you just tell the state that you're going to keep on funding the plan. It's just so many people, especially with the OPEB.
Yeah, the OPEB, it never used to be tracked in a way of like prepayment.
Yeah.
So nobody had money set aside for the prepayment of, healthcare liabilities. So I mean, our healthcare liability on the books is probably, what, $12 million, something like that?
I can tell you.
So it's the actual pre-funding of that liability up to 40%. So not only are you paying as you go, then you have to set the extra aside. It's completely changing the way that you fund that liability. And when did that take effect? 2019?
Yeah, that was 75.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
For the longest time, the pension and the OPEB, you weren't even tracking the liability on the books like you are now. RSI. So your your total OPEB liability right now is 10.2, and these are old numbers, obviously, we're talking March 31st. And your net OPEB liability was just under $10 million at 9.6, 9.7.
Other questions for Dan?
So real quick, I guess, Dan, while I have you there.
Yeah.
It's not related to this audit specifically, but it is related to something else that we're working on.
Yeah.
You and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week or so ago, about the expenditure of funds from an enterprise account in other accounts, and utilizing funds from an enterprise account to fund expenditures like, let's say, in the police or the fire department. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think that would violate section 1300, and I think I'd have to look at the exact area, but we looked into that, where those enterprise funds are really supposed to just be cost recovery. So when you start charging more in those enterprise funds and you're transferring it out into other funds, it's almost like a hidden tax that it could be bad, not only in terms of violation of accounting standards, but I would, if you guys are considering that, I would suggest you get legal advice.
And just to be clear, we're not looking at doing that. We just want to address any concerns that would be the case.
Yeah. I understand completely.
Because there is a lot of people out there that kind of think of the township as just one big pot of money and
Right.
you spend it wherever you want, and it doesn't work that way.
Right. That's incorrect fund accounting. Yep.
All right.
Cool.
Again, we have a clean statement from you, which is the main thing.
Clean statement, and all of your reports were filed on time with the state. Good.
Good. Thank you.
You.
All right. Moving right along, before we get to public comment, I would like to just take a moment to have a moment of silence for Les Schmidtke in honor of him. Les Schmidtke was a longtime employee, I believe over or around 40 years as an employee of Grosse. He had 39 years with the fire department as a volunteer, and at least 12 years on the DPS commission. So that was a resident who really gave back to his community, and unfortunately Les passed away, and his service was last week. So if we could just take a moment and remember him. Thank you. Next on the agenda, public comment on agenda items. Do we have any? It doesn't look like we do. There's, we got, the hand went up. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. This podium.
I'm Bill Heil, and I live on East River. There's this agenda item number 3, waste hauling contract, excuse me, lime slurry sludge pump. And I was reading over that, and some of the comment that was made here on that stimulates part of what I'm talking about now. Am I heard okay with this microphone?
You're fine, sir.
I'm speaking conceptually. I don't remember the exact dollar figures that were there, but my concept would be tight. I think the original estimated cost of replacement of the pump was something like $160,000. And it turns out that to get the job done, it's $260,000, $240,000. A number that was bigger than the original entire budget for that department. It was, in other words, the department came in at, say, $240, and this darn pump without everything else was $260. And then there was some comment made, if I recall correctly, when I looked into this, that we might rob Peter to pay Paul, and please don't take that, to make that happen. And we're talking about here, in a minute ago, various funds passing back and forth and it being legal or not. I guess I'm saying I'd like to know a little bit more about what's going on here. That would be the gist of it.
Well, when we get to that, hopefully we will discuss that and let you know.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Other comments on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Consent agenda, David?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda 24-053, which consists of minutes of the September 9th, 2024 regular meeting, check registers dated through October 4th, 2024, Fire Commission resignation. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, here.
I
Here.
got the wrong one.
You do, here, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll start, number 3, removal of Grosse Police Department file cabinets, Community Recreation Commission member resignation, Housing Readiness Incentive Grant, Michigan Arts and Culture Council Grant Award, and the Grosse Toll Bridge Phase 1 environmental study and hazardous materials inspection.
Support?
Comments?
I just want to note the 3 grants in this consent agenda, continued diligence on behalf of the township for grants, grateful for that.
Yes, it's something that we've really done well in over the last few years, is all of the departments going out and looking for grants, looking for extra money, which not only helps the budget, but keeps the taxes down. Other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve consent agenda 24-053, which consists of the minutes of the September 9th, 2024 regular meeting, check registers dated through October 4th, 2024, removal of the Grosse Police Department file cabinets, Community Recreation Commission member resignation, Housing Readiness Incentive Grant, Michigan Arts and Culture Council Grant Award, and the Grosse Toll Bridge Phase 1 ESA and hazardous material inspection contract. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Our consent agenda is passed. All right. With that, we'll go into the action items. It appears this is the David Nadeau show today. Dave, go ahead, number 1.
Okay, this is a resolution Whereas the Township of Grosse ARPA fund has a $20,732 unassigned deficit fund balance on March 31st, 2024. And whereas 1971 PA 140 requires that a deficit elimination plan be formulated by the local unit of government and filed with the Michigan Department of Treasury. Now therefore it is resolved that the Township of Grosse Board of Trustees adopts the following Township of Grosse ARPA Fund Deficit Elimination Plan. Not sure how I can read it. No.
Go through the resolved.
Okay. We have an unassigned fund deficit at 4/1 of '24 in the amount of $20,732. There was revenue from the federal grant ARPA coronavirus of $287,779. Interest earned on that of $9,000 for total revenue of $296,779. Expenditures, capital improvements at Township Hall in the amount of $179,246. Capital improvements at the Public Safety Building in the amount of $2,093. Capital improvements at the Water's Edge Restaurant, $25,000. And transfers to general fund one-time costs of $108,258 for total expenditures of $314,597. And then there was a release of non-spendable fund balance for prepaid expenditures in the amount of $38,550. And at 3/31/25, we have an unassigned fund balance of $0. Be it further resolved that the Township of Grosse's Finance Director submit the deficit elimination plan to the Michigan Department of Treasury for certification.
Thank you, David. Any questions or comments on the, okay, yes, if somebody wants
Support.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that? This is to take care of our ARPA fund. It's required that we do this. Any comment, Teresa?
Actually, this is related to our March 31st, 2024 year end. At that particular moment, we had some timing issues. We had 2 projects that were started, but under governmental accounting standards and the requirements under federal funding, we could not recognize the revenue. We have all of our ARPA coronavirus funding. It's just we had to record it as deferred revenue until the expenditures were recognized. So even though we had an overall fund balance of just over $17,800, we also had what had to be classified as prepaid expenses on March 31st of '24. And that amount exceeded our fund balance, our total fund balance. So that's what generated the deficit. So we're required to file a deficit elimination plan with the state of Michigan. All of the figures that Mr. Nadeau read is our activity for the 2024-2025 year, showing that we've eliminated, currently the deficit is eliminated. Because the reason for the timing on the expenditures was we had purchased new restaurant equipment. The restaurant didn't open till May. We couldn't recognize the expenditure. And also we had started some of the preliminary work on the replacement of the HVAC units on Township Hall, and that project was not completed until May. So now everything's complete, and we have an overall fund balance, unassigned fund balance of $0. And then I will have to send this to the state of Michigan tomorrow.
Very good.
I think Daniel addressed the same thing in the audit. There's a lengthy explanation in there, and then you have a letter explaining what you did.
Correct.
So I guess just to put it in layman's terms, we didn't actually overspend that fund. We just did it across fiscal years, which caused it to appear that way.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of thing is timing.
It's timing,
And you have to
right.
account properly, so something that although in the end is gonna be okay, it can look as a deficit or a credit at a different point in time.
So when you look at the section for fund balance, there's different categories of fund balance. And when you have items like inventory and prepaid items, those have to be separated out because those are non-spendable. You've already spent the money, you just haven't used it or been able to recognize the expenditure at that particular point in time. And that's what happened here.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Hearing none, we have a resolution, and I'm not going to read it all. I'll just read part of it. Whereas the Township of Grosse ARPA fund has a $20,732 unassigned deficit fund balance on March 31st, 2024, and whereas 1971 PA 140 requires that a deficit elimination plan be formulated by the local unit of government and filed with the Michigan Department of Treasury. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the Township of Grosse Board of Trustees adopts the following Township of Grosse ARPA Fund Deficit Elimination Plan. The plan is, as Mr. Nadeau read, without any changes, so I won't go through it again. Being a resolution, we will take roll call on this. Joe?
Aye.
Jameson?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Uda?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Resolution passes. Thank you. David?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that based on a recommendation from the Grosse Township Department of Public Services Commission, the Grosse Township Board hereby approves an extension of a contract with Priority Waste based upon the terms and conditions listed in the attached proposal.
Second.
Thank you.
We approved a contract with Priority Waste, and we were previously, our waste disposal was at the Riverview landfill. There was a contract written. The DPS director, Derek, the DPS commission, and our legal counsel had issues with the language that effectively all liabilities associated with that contract were going to be laid off on the township and on Priority. And Riverview was assuming no liability associated with that, which we found to be unacceptable. And as a result, we talked with Priority. Priority has the ability to dispose of our refuse at alternate funds or alternate locations. So, and in fact, I believe, if I read this correctly, there, and Dan, you can correct me if your rates were less than what we were paying to Riverview, and that's where we're at. So that nobody knows the status into the future for the Riverview landfill. So we're using alternate sites arranged through Priority directly.
Okay, and the extension,
3-year contract
3-year
starting
contract.
next month.
Derek, you have anything to add to that?
Dan is in the audience tonight, so he might have some things to mention, but as the treasurer had mentioned, this is a 3-year contract with priority for both hauling and disposal of waste. Some months ago, I think the disposal contract was brought to the board. It was never executed because, as Dave had mentioned, it got tied up with some legal concerns. So we are still currently disposing with Riverview, but effective middle of November, we would then move to priority if this is approved by the board. As far as waste hauling, nothing would change. We would just continue with priority for the next 3 years at the rates that are listed within the agreement. There is information that was included in the action item to show market rates and recent bid results. We feel that the pricing that was provided by priority was very competitive based upon what results we've seen from recent bids. In addition, the solid waste hauling market is always changing. It ebbs and flows. There's contractors that come on board, leave, get consolidated, get bought out. Unfortunately, this is not a great time as far as municipalities go to have a great amount of contractors to choose from. Priority recently purchased GFL, which is probably the only other competitor in the market. So there is very few haulers to choose from at this point in time. Not only for us, but also for the whole Southeast Michigan area. So Republic is no longer doing residential. GFL was purchased. Waste Management is not providing service in this area. And when we bid this last time, Waste Management was almost double the cost of what we were with our other bidders. I feel the township has been pretty happy with the work that Priority has done for us. They are very responsive to issues that come up. We have some 4,000 homes, so you're always going to have some issues. It's as I've said a million times before, it's how you respond to them and how you address those issues that come up. That's of utmost importance, and I think Priority has done a lot of nice things to be sure that they can respond effectively. All their trucks have GPSs. All their trucks have cameras. So when there is a missed pickup, they can go back and review the tape to see what occurred at that specific home. They can track the routes to see why it was missed, if there was a section of road that wasn't addressed. And then they do a pretty good job of coming back and addressing those that might be missed if we do have those occurrences. So the 3-year contract provides us some flexibility, more flexibility than a longer, like 5 or 7 year contract, if new vendors do come online to keep them honest about their pricing. And provide us with flexibility if we want to go to market in 3 years if there are no more options to choose from. Not that we're unhappy with Priority or expect to be unhappy with Priority, but we always want to make sure that we have access to the most competitive pricing within the market. So that's all I have to add. I don't know if you want Dan to speak at all, but Priority's rep is here tonight.
Did you have a question or a
I
comment?
did have a question. You might
Dan.
come up, Dan. I just in past, it's a little shimmy to the side here on the issue of the contract. Not unhappy with your services. I know in the past when we've had some bridge issues with weight limits to get waste haulers onto, say, Swan Island or some of the other outlying islands, you've worked with us. You've brought in smaller, lighter weight trucks or lowered your loads in order to accommodate that. Obviously, we're facing a potential of maybe the Free Bridge closing sooner than we expected. I would presume that you would again work with us on some level to accommodate needs during that closure. I don't think you'd be able to necessarily get trucks over the toll bridge, but I'm just saying you've got a good history of working with us. I'm hoping that at that time, because I know Derek said we're going to try to be proactive and get a lot of things in place before any such potential closure, that I believe we can count on you to work with us to help the island out.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek and I have had conversations already. Some things are still up in the air as far as where things will lie after a period of time here, but knowing, it's going to come quickly, we want to have a plan in place effective before the, new year, so the information could be shared out for residents, yourselves, to share out to residents as well, to make sure that the message is heard, understood, and what the plan is, because we don't want to be scrambling at the last minute, and if we are, it's going to scramble the residents. So we want to get a solid plan in place and ready to educate, so that way when we're running in that period where the bridge is shut down, everybody knows what the play is.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Dean?
Do you track complaints at all, Dan? Like when people call in, if there's a misty, have you noticed them go up or down on Grosse, or do you have any stats on that or no?
We do track a number of our measurables, complaints. We call any call into our office a complaint, whether it is or isn't, because that's kind of hard to really dial into what a call complaint could be, because a call complimenting could also include a call to complain about an issue. What we see is far less in Grosse than even 6 months ago. We try to have trends to where we see an improvement every 6 months, to where we're operating at 99+% in collection rate. We have 12,000 attempts each week to make a mistake, because with 3 different commodities. So we know that that's a significant number. So if we're getting probably on average 10 to 20 calls on a weekly basis, I think that small percentage is pretty significant. If we see an uptick, we take that measuring tool and say, okay, why did we see an uptick this week, or what was the issue? Was there something we did, some education we can do out to the public to mitigate their complaint, and then move forward?
At least anecdotally, that's what I've noticed. I feel like there's been less complaints, so thank you for confirming that. One common complaint we often got was recycling getting mixed in with the trash. Do you have any sense of where that is or what's going on there, or no?
Yeah, it's still a human issue with human services. There are a couple layers to it. We could obviously make a mistake where we grab something improperly and mix it. That's the benefit, as Derek had described, having the cameras to root out those causes. Was it our fault? Did we grab a clearly marked container that was recycling, or did we grab something that maybe wasn't so clearly marked, which we can then maybe mail a sticker out to a resident to put on their can, make sure that it's properly labeled. But at the end of our days, these guys and gals that are in the trucks, I relate it to when I drive to Chicago for 5.5 hours. That last hour, I'm always a little bit more stressed, a little bit more high-strung, because I'm just anxious to get to my end point. Our employees are in trucks for 8 to 10 hours a day and constantly fighting traffic to make sure that they're safe for your residents and the public. So mistakes happen, right? And the cameras have really been a huge tool in us identifying root causes to avoid them in the future.
And then, I know there was a recent Grosse alert about missed trash on Church Road, which I was grateful for because I was on that road too. But I did notice it was harder to get in touch with you all than usual. I know you probably have more communities you're serving now. It seems like the phone, you're on hold longer with the phones, it seems like, right?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. We did take on 700,000 more homes in flip of a switch from June 30th to July 1st. In that month of June, the previous service provider had some significant issues completing their services of those 73 other communities. So first 2 hours, we received about 7,000 calls. Before, we were receiving 1,200 calls a week. And what ended up happening, unbeknownst to us, is it basically fried the back-end phone operating system. It caused a myriad of issues, but really just a general lack of IT knowledge. They crashed. So in the second week of July, we were previously engaged with the national service provider for phones, AWS, Amazon Web Services. They came back to the table that second week of July once we realized really what had happened. They implemented their first phase in of their phone system in September around the 13th. The next phase is going to actually go in soon, if it didn't already, the middle of this month, and then the third in November and the final phase in December. So we'll have a completely new phone operating system to support, give off-ramps and callback options that are less manual, more automatic. So for instance, if you were to call in and say, I want to call back, you were in the queue before, it would report to us in a spreadsheet, and then we'd have to manually call them back, and that can get too many hands in a cookie jar, nobody can take that cookie out. And we realized that we were missing, I thought you were working from 10 down, instead you were working from 15 down, so those 5 were missed. This new system already in place is automatically calling people back when their spot has been reserved. So we finish up with the 5 calls ahead of you. There's about a 1-minute gap for cleanup of the person taking the calls previously to make notes or next actions, and then the phone system automatically calls them back. So we do know that the hold times are right now are averaging in the market of 7 to 10 minutes, and the peak times could be greater, and the less peak times could be 1 to 2. Our target has always been and always will be 3 minutes or less for somebody to be on hold and get to us.
Are calls still the best? That's what I usually tell people, call priority waste if there's an issue. Is that still the best thing for them to do, or no?
You can call us, or if they have a digital means, our website has 2 options: a live chat feature, which is AI bot done, which will feed, collect information from them and then feed it to our LDC, as we call them, the logistic driver coordinators. That's kind of a customer service type representative. They work with the infield teams to make any recovery actions. Or on our Grosse specific page, there's a contact us form that they can fill out and send their information to us, which will log in and gets right to that person as well.
Okay, so either one of those works. One isn't preferable over the other. Okay,
Nope.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? All right, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion before us based upon the recommendation of the Grosse Township Department of Public Services Commission that the Grosse Township Board hereby approves an extension of a contract with Priority Waste based upon the terms and conditions listed in the attached proposal. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you for your continued service to us, Dan. And David, if you would.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion based upon a recommendation by the Grosse Township Engineers and the Grosse DPS Commission that the Grosse Township Board authorizes, the award of a contract with Process Piping and Equipment at a contract cost of $244,000 plus a 10% contingency, making the total authorization $268,400 for the replacement of lime slurry and the level 1 sludge transfer pumps at the Grosse Township wastewater treatment plant.
Support.
Thank you.
Okay. Under this, both the lime slurry and level 1 sludge pumps were scheduled to be replaced in this current fiscal year. The budgeted amount for this work was $115,000, putting the requested award over budget for the year. The capital outlay budget for the entire fiscal year was $220,000. Additional funds will be transferred over from some accounts that are estimated to be under budget within the fiscal year to cover the difference. In addition, a variety of projects are being delayed into the 25-26 budget, including a lime mixer gearbox, SFE system, auto filler, a bleach feed system, and the EQ basin channel monster rebuild. The units being replaced, the 2 pumps, are in poor condition, as well as the piping servicing them. The lime slurry pump is over 15 years old, in poor condition, and it works in tandem with the sludge pump. And the sludge pump is original from the 1960s. And without these pumps, we cannot transfer sludge to the storage tank in order to be stabilized with the lime sludge.
All right. We had a question earlier regarding the I think what the resident was getting at was that, okay, you had 115 in your budget, it's 244 or 268 with the contingency. The movement of funds to cover that is within the department. It's not taking out of other funds. You have a budget and you have line items that estimate to be paid so much or to use so much. Some of those estimates are more than what you're going to use, so you can take that excess and pay for something that is more than what it was budgeted for. But it's all within the same budget. It's moving it around from line to line, but it doesn't change the budget at all, the overall budget.
Within,
Yeah,
How did they miss by such a huge percentage? I mean, from 115 to 260, that's not really.
Well, because you and I'll let Derek talk to it, but I think it's because it happens simply because when you sit down there and you're projecting, you haven't gone out and bid these. You may not know what the market is when you actually go to get it. So these things happen all the time. I mean, it's not unusual for this type of thing to happen, and budgets within the budget process or within them working their budget, taking something from one line item that isn't going to be used and using it for something that has been used. That's the way you do it. That's how you come up with your funds. It's just moving that money around within that department, that budget. Derek,
Yeah, so
maybe you
I'll
can
add to that.
Explain it better.
Yeah, so when the budget was formulated, the plan was only to replace just the pumps. So just the pumps came in around $115,000. But as the specifications were put together to go to bid, the operator requested some adjustments to the project scope to include piping outside of the pumps, and also a large electrical component that was in poor condition. And so basically the scope of the project changed from when it was budgeted for, which attributed to the higher cost of the project. The electrical panel itself that was replaced was $40,000. So, and then the piping was that above and beyond that 115 as well. And as the supervisor had mentioned, the wastewater treatment plant budgets, I want to say it's right around $1.5 million or something like that. So, as he had mentioned, there's probably 20 accounts within the wastewater treatment plant budget, with certain budget numbers that were established. We have a couple that we know are going to come in under budget, so those funds will be moved from those line items that aren't going to achieve their full expenditure, and utilize those funds within the same account, the same budget, wastewater treatment plant budget, to fund the overage. One example is, I think we had budgeted 5% for our renewal cost for our operator, their increase year over year. And I think we came in at 3%, so that should be about enough to cover this overage on this specific expenditure. So, and then a few of these other projects will be moved to a subsequent fiscal year, so next fiscal year. The ones that were mentioned, the lime gearbox rebuild and 2 other items. But we've got a lot of work going on at the plant right now, so that's not a problem. We've got $8 million worth of work happening there, so those were kind of wishes that we would like to have done, but they can wait until next year.
Other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion based upon the recommendation by Grosse Township Engineers and the Grosse Department of Public Service Commission. The Grosse Township Board authorizes the award of a contract with Process Piping and Equipment at a contract cost of $244,000 plus a 10% contingency, making the total authorization $268,400 for the replacement of lime slurry and the level 1 sludge transfer pumps at the Grosse Township wastewater treatment plant. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? we have our contract award. Thank you. All right, next, public comment. 3 minutes, you know your name and address. Margaret will be first because she's dressed for winter.
Bite your tongue.
Yes, I am.
You should not say that word.
Yeah, you're right. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So, Margaret Shelton, Bellevue Road. I've mentioned this before, and I just want to highlight it again and perhaps request that if we maybe we've already done this, but if we haven't, if we could set something up with DTE to go through their protocols, what we should expect. Their build is in high gear right now. I'm sure you've all seen, they're laying the ground, and it's just really important that I think we understand both our first responders and even the community have an opportunity to have, maybe some time to ask some questions, have, dialogue, but it's very important, I think, for the first responders, and not just Grosse, but I mean, obviously that's my priority, but the surrounding communities. I think that, I know that the storage facility is focusing on lithium iron rather than lithium ion. And the iron is a little less volatile. It's considered safer, but I think it's still really important that we have a dialogue with them. And if they haven't already contacted us, perhaps we should have a discussion with them and get something set up. So that was it for me.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
We will look into that. The other young lady. Yeah. How are you, Mickey?
Good, how are you doing?
Good.
So I just want to bring up,
Mickey.
oh, I know, but you all know by now.
But the
Michelle
people-
Bartlett.
We're broadcasting to millions of people,
Yep.
so.
Michelle Bartlett, envoy. So I wanted to bring up, everybody is just going crazy over the bridges and they're worried because they really don't know what will happen. And with Wayne County saying now that the Wayne County Bridge may go down in March or April, I know Derek and you guys are all over it, but it's my understanding you're going to be talking to the different businesses, to the different government functions, and finding out or putting together a plan for what will happen during that month. And so, for example, will we get Amazon deliveries? Will we get mail deliveries? Will public safety be impacted and all those things? What I'm wondering is, as you're doing that and you're developing it, is there any idea to communicate that information and roll it out? I know even the businesses on Macomb are going to be very interested in that. I know that they have a concern for the long-term closure, whether they could even continue to operate or if it would put them out of business. Well, another month of being down can certainly impact them. So just wondering how you will put together that plan and communicate it to people. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll address one issue in my trustees report on that.
Yeah, we actually did address that at the informational meeting, and we still plan to follow that plan. So, but we'll talk about it when. Bill, did you have?
Excuse me.
Bill Heil, I live on East River. The only reason I was so eager to jump up on this was that I wanted to add a remark from conversation I had earlier tonight about the same issue that Margaret was addressing, and it would have had a coherence to it. It happens that I have a nephew who is a project manager for construction projects wherever he goes in the United States. He's done windmill farms. He happens right now to be in Texas. He's doing battery energy storage installations, a number of them in the state. They're big ones. And I heard a conversation today about concerns for the safety that was here. So I put that to him and said, what would be the major concern for public safety from these types of installations that you have? He said, well, the flammability to some degree is related to what's in the battery. There's different kinds of batteries, and some are more volatile than others, but that's basically an issue that's understood and under control. And they said, well, how do you control it? And the answer that was given was, well, there's engineering standards on what the distance is between them. And when they're designed that way, they take a look at the wind circumstance around a place and adjust accordingly. And I brought that up because we have considerable wind compared to some other places. So these batteries would technically, probably, as I understood it, with a competent engineer who designs the layout, be a little farther apart. That's what I would understand it to mean. I'm not an expert on this. I'm just telling you about a conversation I had here. And there was also the possibility that a battery might leak, and that might have some environmental impact, but that was not significant. The whole farm wasn't going to leak. There'd be one battery, and they have ways of monitoring this. There are systems that are designed with sensors, if you would, and technically, in our conversation, you could have a battery installation like this across the street, and if the home office was in Paris, France, they could monitor the thing. If something came off wrong, they would know somewhere in there who to call to tell them to go out and take care of it. That's what I learned today. I think it's wise that we have some public comment, some opportunity for public to have their concerns and the issues that are important to them addressed. And so I'm supporting the recommendation that Margaret made about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Other comments? Yes. Mr. Bob, how are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? Bob Z., Blauville. I also would like to endorse our two trustees here on this request regarding the project right across the channel from us. I think a project of that magnitude deserves a presentation to the community, so we should know what to expect, especially in terms of public health and safety. And Derek, may I lean on you as our township supervisor to maybe make that phone call and invite DTE? That would put Grosse in the lead. And if you would like to sponsor that, I'm sure other members of other communities would be happy to hear and ask and talk about that specific project. Maybe we could even offer our hall. I'm sure we would get people to come in. It's a very important project, and as Margaret said, they're going gun-ho. I think it's something that I know many people have questions because I've talked to them. In regards to safety and health, I think it would be an excellent opportunity for the people to understand exactly what's going on. So if DTE would give us a presentation, I don't see why they would hesitate to do that. One other comment, and I've talked with Therese on this before, and if I'm wrong, you correct me, dear. The chart that we showed, the pie chart, with 61% going to public safety, that's a general fund, right? Correct. Just so there's a clarification, right. That is not the total revenue that we take in. 61% of our total revenue does not go to public safety. I think approximately 38% goes to the police department. Am I wrong?
Out of our total general fund budget,
Our $12 million,
61%
right.
is the police department.
Police department eats up 4.3 mils out of the total 12 approximately in our total millage. That doesn't come to 61%.
Our total millage is not all general fund.
I know that. But when you show that chart, I just want to make sure that people understand when they see 61% up there, because a lot of people read charts differently, they assume that 61% of our total millage or our total revenue is going to the police department. And this is so very important for them to understand that that is not true, especially when our department is going out and asking for a millage.
And I just public safety, doesn't it? So it includes the fire department, which is probably why you're seeing a larger percentage.
I still don't think it'll come to 61%.
Teresa, it's 61% of the general fund.
Oh, general fund, yes.
General fund,
But
and that's just the police department.
That's what that
Okay,
what
and
that is.
that's the clarification I want to make, because people are looking out here and they see that chart, and I've talked with them, and many of them have already misinterpreted that, is our total dollars, 61% goes to public safety. And that is not true. 61% of the general fund may, but not 61% of our total take-in.
Correct.
And that's the clarification I'd like to make. If I'm wrong, please
No,
tell
that's
me.
what it says.
That's exactly what it
That's
says.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll, oh, I'm sorry.
Frank Gerner, Blauvelt Drive. I just had a question with regards to the ESA for the Grosse Toll Bridge. You say this is phase one, and my understanding is you guys have been working on this over a year and a half. Why is it now just going to a phase one to look for hazardous problems or materials around that bridge?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, in environmental research lingo, phase one is like an initial assessment. You won't go to a phase two unless the initial assessment shows that there is a high chance that there is contamination. A phase two would be a sampling. So the concern was spending the money for the environmental investigation without there being a high probability of it going to the ballot, moving forward, making sure that everything seemed to make sense financially. So, and DCC as the funding agency for this was concerned about that. As a matter of fact, when we went to them for the money, that an additional proposal was given like, hey, do we want to wait until after we know whether this passes or not, if, you know, to spend this money. So that was the major concern. But we did also know that the timeline to complete this work, we could fit it in without causing any potential delays. Because the contractors had told us it'd take about 30 days. So that's the reason why.
Okay, so second part to my question would be is if they did have a finding, we're already in the process of voting for this bridge. We're not even got a timeline of, we're gonna be right on that balanced time of voting and finding out what this is about going into phase two.
I think one of the biggest concerns when you're purchasing a property and you're doing this type of research is to make sure that you have this research done to ensure that you're not responsible for the cleanup of any potential contamination that might exist. So I've said this before, I'm not an environmental lawyer, but my understanding of things is that if you identify any potential contamination or any risk of potential contamination prior to your purchase, then you absolve yourself of the liability of potentially having to incur the cost to clean that up. So that this would give us that assurance that it has been identified, if there is any, and I'm not saying that there is, to make sure that the taxpayers of Grosse aren't liable if we buy the bridge, that we would be responsible for the cost of cleanup of any contamination that exists at that property.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Now I think we're ready to move on with our reports. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Well, I'm going to start out with the fun stuff. If you have seen online and in the Grosse Grand, the Community Recreation Department is putting on a Fall Harvest Festival this coming Saturday, October 19th at Centennial Farms from 1 until 6 p.m. There's an entry fee of $5 per person, and there may be additional cost if you want to partake in the beer tent or from the food trucks, but we're really trying to grow this festival a little bit. And so there's going to be live music, there'll be food vendors, there'll be a beer tent, hay rides, an animal petting farm, and a lot of different things. And as Chad has pointed out, everybody who comes will go home with a pumpkin. So I hope you all will come and enjoy this October festival with the community recreation. The next thing is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. is the Election Commission meeting. We meet here in this room, and what we will be doing is appointing qualified and registered election inspectors and receiving board officials. We will also be approving emergency election inspectors, chairpeople, and receiving board officials. So that is tomorrow morning here at 9 a.m. And that leads me over to Brian, who's got a slightly more lengthy report to give about what's coming up with the election and what the clerk's office is doing in preparation.
Yes, all things just as fun as a fall festival. Also, tomorrow morning we will be conducting the public accuracy test right after our regular meeting of the Election Commission. That will also be broadcast live on GITV. Absentee ballots are now available. Absentee ballots can be requested online through the Secretary of State website, in person in the clerk's office, or by mailing or emailing our office an application. Ballots can be returned via mail, in person in the clerk's office, in the drop box outside of Township Hall, or you can personally put your ballot in the tabulator during the 9 days of early voting or on Election Day. Ballots do have to be returned by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Monday, October 21st is the deadline to register to vote by mail or online to be eligible to vote for the November 5th election. And starting Tuesday, October 22nd, all registered voting will become in-person registered voting at the clerk's office with proof of residency between the 22nd and Election Day. Friday, October 25th at 4 p.m. is the deadline to run as a write-in in the November general election. Saturday, October 26th, early voting begins and runs for 9 consecutive days through Sunday, November 3rd from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. here at Township Hall. Friday, November 1st, the early absent voter counting board will meet to process and tabulate Precinct 1 ballots from 8 a.m. until finished, but no later than 8 p.m. Precinct 1, now when we combined 1 and 2 at the beginning of this year, Precinct 1 now has about 4,500 registered voters and will be bringing in over 2,000 absentee ballots to process. That is way too many for them to do in one day. So we will establish an early absent voter counting board to verify, open, and run a predetermined number of ballots through the tabulator. No tapes will be run on that day. The ballots and equipment will be locked down at the end of the day and will be opened back up with the absent counting board on Election Day to continue processing the rest of the ballots until all ballots are run. Friday, November 1st at 5 p.m. is the deadline to send an absentee ballot to an applicant by first-class mail. Monday, November 4th, 4 p.m. is deadline to request an absentee ballot in person in the clerk's office. Clerk's office will be open Saturday, October 26th, Sunday, October 27th, Saturday, November 2nd, and Sunday, November 3rd from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. to register to vote or request an absentee ballot. And Tuesday, November 5th is Election Day. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's all I got.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Obviously, if you watch the news and live a life on the internet, you'll know that there's a lot of conjecture about what we may be facing in the weeks leading up to the election and in the days after the election. We said our Pledge of Allegiance here today. I'm hoping that we remain one union under God, indivisible. What I want to say is Michigan has a very robust set of election laws. We have a tried and trustworthy election process. It was designed by the naysayers so that it really does take into account anything that can possibly go wrong. With every new election technology, the law has been updated to account for any potential issues. And so I just want to encourage people that if you're reading things about the Michigan election process, your number one source really should be the Secretary of State of Michigan, the Bureau of Elections websites and information. We are all educated repeatedly and consistently in all the changes that happen, and And I have a great deal of faith as well in our election team. They work hard to stay up to date. They work hard to stay up, period. It's a long day for our election workers. People are welcome to watch the election process take place. There will be poll watchers from all political parties taking part, watching what's happening at the polls. We are very much hoping for a peaceful election day, and but at the same time, our public safety officers will be coursing around the precincts and voting places to make sure that it does stay peaceful and that we do keep our election workers safe and our election staff safe. So with that being said, that's the clerk's report, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Uda. Treasurer's report, David.
Thank you, Mr. Budney. For the month of September, Grosse Township had a total invested funds of $11,754,000. These funds generated a total investment interest or investment earnings of $45,800 for an average interest rate for the month of 3.96%. The total September investment report is on our website, grosse.com, under the Treasurers tab. Summer tax bills, we continue to collect at Township Hall. There's a late payment penalty of 1% per month, and we have collected a total of 97% of the summer tax rolls. What else do I have? 2025 pet tags are now available. The fee is $6 until the end of January, when the fee increases to $12. You need to provide proof of a valid rabies vaccination when purchasing your pet tags. Our next DPS commission meeting is on November 12th at 7 o'clock here in the boardroom. And the next Airport Commerce Park Commission meeting is a week from today, October 21st at 6 p.m. And finally, I'd like to give a shout out to the U.S. Navy for its 249th birthday, which was yesterday. And a shout out to all the currently serving or have served in the United States Navy. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, David. Trustee reports. Joe?
Hello, good evening. I sit on the Police Commission, and the meetings are the third Tuesday of the month, 7 o'clock in the boardroom. And after the last meeting, there is nothing to relay to the public right now. Just if you have any questions, you can always come to the meeting. We will try and answer them there for you. Or if you want to call Chief Carmack if you have anything. So don't be bashful if there's something that you're wondering about or have a question. Either way, we will try and get you an answer. A couple other things I wanted to touch upon tonight. Derek and I have been notified after the last bridge meeting. We did go over a couple of issues. Now I want to hit two of them. I think it's just important to reiterate to the people. The first thing is, the question came up is when an entity has a project, and I know that Jim mentioned this, talked about it, and so did Derek, and I talked about it at the two meetings previous, that when an entity is doing a project and there is a detour, that there's two state statutes. The numbers of them aren't important, but what they say is that for a detour, that the entity must provide the funding for that detour. Now, the question that came up to us a couple of times was, because we have to go to the toll bridge, can the tolls be paid for, number one, by the county, and number two, can the updating the, we call them not just the repairs to the toll bridge, but any work and any money that has to be done to upgrade that bridge to a truck bridge, basically in layman's term, as opposed to a vehicle passenger bridge, that why won't they pay for it, and can we litigate because of that? Now, what we did is I asked Derek to have our township attorney, who our municipal attorney, look into it, Kristen, and Kristen came back with an opinion. Now, also, a gentleman in the audience, Mr. Karmazin, he had an opinion from the group that he belongs to, which asked the same question. So we have two municipal attorneys. The two opinions that came back were identical. They were basically identical, that there is no case law out there forcing, which would be the county in this aspect, to pay for anything because it's not technically a detour. I know we say, well, it is a detour because I got to leave the island. Well, it's not the detour you think of when you go down I-75. It takes you off on a street to a side road, and that street to the side road had to be built, and that has to be paid for by whoever was doing the work on I-75. That's a different story here. Now, I'm not going to get into her opinion and try to explain it. I'm not going to get into Mr. Cusimano's opinion of the second municipal opinions attorney and try to explain it, because I'm not the attorney here. But what I can tell you is both of them stated that there is no case law. It would take years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to litigate, and we're litigating against the people who we need to work with us. Not to say, oh, we're afraid and can't do it. You know, we have to do what we have to do here, and some lawsuits that were filed by Grosse Township were with people we have to work with, and that's the way life is. I understand that. But I just want to make it clear, because we got them after the last bridge meeting. And the two opinions that came in by two municipal attorneys, once again, were basically identical. And there's even a question of, does the bridge constitute a detour even? Going over that bridge. Do you have to go over the bridge? No, I know people are might be upset at this. No, you don't have to go over that bridge. It doesn't take you from Grosse Parkway to a side bridge and off the island. That's a totally different story. So I'm not going to try and explain too much more into what their opinion is, only that I just want you to know we did our due diligence in looking into this with our own attorney, and also Mr. Karmazin can even talk about the opinion that he obtained through the group that he is on the board of. So that's the first thing. I just wanted to make sure, because it's still out there and they're still talking about it. And it's very important that you get the information, and if you agree with it, okay. If you don't agree with it, I get it. You have the right to agree or disagree, or when you go vote, you can vote yes for something in life. You can vote no, but I just feel it was important to get that out there just to make sure we're clear on it. The second thing I think that is very important is that Ms. Bartlett brought up too, and also previously that Ms. Shelton brought up, is that we are working. I've already been meeting with Derek. Derek is handling everything internal that the township will be dealing with, trash pickup, our sewage that needs to be trucked off the island a few times a year from the sewer treatment plant. And then I've taken upon myself, I've already met with the business manager of the school system, and we're setting up a meeting that we're going to go over and do everything we possibly can for the school system. This is for the March that they were talking about, the March closure of the bridge. And I'm going to, when I become supervisor in November, I'm going to have a open meeting for all the business owners on Macomb, and we're going to give them everything in advance that we have that we can help them with to prepare them for this. So you're going to have private individuals that I hope make the meeting too, because they could have construction projects, just as the Grosse school system is having this multi-million-dollar project. And I spoke with the superintendent already on it, and between myself, her, and the business manager, we're going to get together and we're going to do everything we possibly can for her, the business owners, and the people of Grosse Ile. So I promise you that we're going to get it in advance form as soon as we get it. There's a difference, because we were just notified, I forget the day that Jim got the phone call, and this was just recently that Jim got the phone call for the project that the county's going to do, we'll say in March. They stated in March, so we'll go with that. So I think those two things are very important to know, that that we are working on it. Derek is handling, once again, some of those issues that, and I want the people to know, irrespective of the vote, the operations plan of Grosse Township for March isn't going to change. It can't change. There's not going to be a difference in the operational issues that we're going to have in March. We all know that. And that's the reason we're still going to go. And I know some of you are saying, well, what if it's a yes, it changes this, and what if it's a no, then we weren't told in time? It's not going to matter. March is going to be March. It's going to be exactly the same no matter what the vote is. And that's why we're working on that. And we're still going to have some answers. So anyway, that's it for me tonight. If anybody else has anything to add or any questions on those issues, so thank you.
And I'll just chime in. The only clarification I would have to that is, as soon as we have anything definite, we will get it out to the people. So hopefully we have something before November 20th, when the new board takes over. And as soon as we have anything where we can actually tell the people, we will tell them. Anything else, Joe?
No, I'm set, Jim. Thank you, sir.
Kyle.
Thank you both. I sit on the Planning Commission, which meets on an as-needed basis. Our next meeting is this Wednesday, the 16th of October at 7 p.m. At that meeting, we'll be discussing a lot split, and also we'll have 3 discussion items, an R1E ordinance amendment, a chicken ordinance, and next steps for the master plan. I know we have possible future trustees in the audience, just to give folks an idea of how hard it can be to update an ordinance. I've been on this R1E ordinance for almost a year now. I don't think I will see it updated within this board term, but at least we'll have a discussion on it. And it's my understanding that right now we have a planner, Brian Borden, that will not be able to do all the ordinance amendments that are needed under a master plan. So it sounds like Ross is going to look for outside help to do some of these ordinance amendments in the future, which I think is a smart move coming out of a master plan. But at least we'll have a discussion on it. We'll see where the Planning Commission stands. To give folks some background on that, about 20 years ago, Grosse put in what is widely acknowledged as pretty restrictive ordinances, seeing the big growth coming out of the 90s, which I think probably made sense at the time. Of course, we went through a recession since then, and now Michigan population is going down, and development is looking a lot different than it did 20 years ago. But as a result of that, a lot of our zoning is pretty restrictive. Most of our housing was built before the year 2000. A lot of our housing does not meet our current zoning standards. But folks that do build have to meet those zoning standards, which I think is good. But on top of that, we have a restrictive R1E ordinance, which not only is like basically restriction on top of restriction. So at least the way that I'm understanding our current environment, R1E will likely still stay in place coming out of the master plan, possibly with a little bit less restrictions on it, which is probably a wise move. But the thing that I'm pushing for is, if there's one lot that someone can build that meets our already restrictive underlying zoning, they should be allowed to build that lot, I think. So that's what I've been advocating for almost a year. We'll be discussing it at this Planning Commission, which I'm excited for. We'll see what comes of that, and then we'll finally be able to vote down that lot split that I've had on the agenda for quite some time. So that's planning. I think at the last board meeting, I brought up, it's not necessarily a Plan B. I think Plan B came up at different places. I think it was accurately stated what Plan B would be for our closures coming up both in March and in the next 3 years. It's not necessarily a Plan B, but it's something I think we definitely need to be looking into, and that is, it's kind of a scary term, but it's called the deauthorization of the Trenton Channel. And what that would mean is it would just cease to be a federal waterway or federally authorized waterway that is mandated to meet certain restrictions. There's a process for it. It has to go through Congress. It's a very long process. It doesn't mean boat traffic can't go through there. It just means it doesn't have to be maintained to the standards that we have to go to the Coast Guard to get certain things approved for. And why I think we need to be looking at this is, I found out the next step is a study, cost-benefit analysis, and whatever the outcome of that study, I think Grosse benefits. If the cost-benefit analysis comes back and says that it makes sense to keep that a federal waterway, then I think we can use that to advocate for funding for both funding for the free bridge definitely, and the toll bridge if voters decide to keep it. So, and if it doesn't, then we can argue that waterway should be deauthorized and possibly look at a fixed span there, which would be a lot easier to maintain. If you have a fixed span there, you don't have to always close down a bridge to maintain it. So it's something long-term that I think needs to be looked into. Yeah, like I said, we've identified next steps. I've heard folks saying that I shouldn't bring this up, it'll overly complicate things, but I think it's important that everyone know we're looking at all different options for what to do there. And we need to be thinking about these things far into the future. Mentioning that, I heard the public comments from several folks about the incoming batteries going in Trenton. Generally, I support what's being suggested there. The biggest recommendation I would make, and I'm happy to jump in and support as well, is that we talk to Trenton about it. We're going to be relying on Trenton for a lot of different things, I think it's important that we do something like that with their support and consent, if possible. If not, we do what we do for our residents, so we do what we do, but there's just so many things I think we're going to be relying on Trenton for, and we'd want to build those relationships, and this is an opportunity to do that, I think, in a positive way, if folks want to do that. So yeah, I will end it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kyle. Jameson.
All right, good evening. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for this week is canceled. The Zoning Board of Appeals would ordinarily meet on the 22nd, but we haven't been notified yet of a meeting. So it'll probably be neither of those meetings this month. And then I don't know if it was Derek or Brian, but I really like the background with the board packet QR code. I don't know which one of you all came up with that, but it's really awesome. I'm sure the audience appreciates it. And hopefully it also appears occasionally on the broadcast too, because I'm sure that would be helpful for them too, or maybe a link on the YouTube channel. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Derek.
Good evening, Supervisor and members of the board. Just a quick few items this evening. There's going to be a fire department open house this Sunday. They'll be having a bake sale, a bouncy house, obstacle course. That's from 12 until 4, October 20th, this Sunday. So stop on by. They'd love to see you and get to learn a little bit more about our fire department. We also have Dump the Junk this weekend from 9 to 4 on Saturday. It's also Find a Treasure, so there's plenty of stuff that will be dropped off. You can pick through, and if you don't have anything to drop off that that has value, you just want to throw it out, there's plenty of dumpsters there for you to be able to utilize at the DPW garage on Grosse Road. The Grosse Rotary is also going to be sponsoring a shredding event from 9 to 12 that day, right outside the entrance to the DPS yard. So that's 9 to 12 on the same day, which is this Saturday. The last public information session on the bridge was obviously last Wednesday. All the information from the 3 public hearings have been posted on the website. That includes the presentations and recordings of the meetings. The cable TV informational video is up, and the FAQ document is also. Those are both also on the website. And I'd like to thank everybody that's taken the time to review that information. And if you haven't yet, visit our website and peruse that information at your leisure. The police department is going to be accepting donations until Friday this week at 5 o'clock for hurricane relief, specifically for Tennessee. There's a trailer in front of the police department. There's a couple of cones there if you want to drop things off. The things that they're saying are needed are bleach and simple green, bottled water, hand soap, non-perishable food, and pet food. This project is put on by the police department, so thank them for their efforts. If you get the opportunity, I believe the trailer will be leaving on Friday, so that 5 o'clock timeline this Friday is a solid concrete date and time. If you want to provide something, make sure it's before that. Grosse Township employees took part in OSHA training, required OSHA training this last Tuesday. I want to apologize to residents if you try to come to Township Hall last Tuesday, as Township Hall was closed for that event, to make sure that all employees had the opportunity to partake in that training. Employees that did partake in the training are now OSHA 10 certified, so happy to report that everybody is safe, hopefully, or at least have had the training to be safe and been given the tools to make sure that they can conduct their jobs in a safe fashion. And then last, I know Trustee DeBussy had mentioned the grants that were on the consent agenda. 2 of those grants were solicited, and he went through the process of procuring them, which isn't an easy process. Ross Quero, our Community Development Director, the Housing Readiness Grant, that was $50,000 that he was able to bring in. That'll be utilized for zoning updates. I think Heil kind of alluded to that a little bit in his report. So that's a significant amount of money that will be utilized to put potentially the master plan changes into effect, or maybe some work on some zoning updates for other items within the community. And then Arts and Culture grant of $12,000 for the DDA district that was obtained by him. Our managers can sit on their hands and not apply for these grants and just do their day-to-day job. But these managers that go above and beyond to take the initiative to put in for these, it's a lot of extra work, but I'm glad to see and glad to state thanks to him and other managers that have obtained grants, because it's across all of our departments to try to make sure that things are accomplished for the residents without having to incur additional cost. And with that, that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Derek. Very quickly, our next DDA meeting is October 24th at 6:30, and the big item on there is Lions Park landscaping contract. You'll see some more changes down there at Lions Park. So slowly but surely, that is taking shape. I believe the grant for the that Ross got for the arts is going to go towards our wall, glass wall that we're putting together for Lions Park. I again would want to reiterate that as far as the bridge closure, as soon as we have anything definite that we can tell you other than, yeah, it's going to be closed, we are going to get it out to you. So don't worry about that. And I just encourage everybody to please vote November 5th. And with that,
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.